Hey everybody, welcome back to another review, and the very first review, at least for myself, of 2026. And today we're going to be talking about a brand new horror film called Primate. Before I get into the review, I just want to thank everybody for checking out all my videos and stuff last year, the ones that found me and subscribed to me. I know I'm not huge by any means or whatever, but I just want to take the time to say thank you to everybody that did check out the channel last year. I started in January of last year, so thank you all so much who did check everything out, subscribed, left comments, and all that good stuff. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of that, and I just thank you so much. So we're starting this year off with a brand new horror movie, which if anybody in the horror community or in just movie community knows that January is typically the dumping ground for most movies, if not horror movies. That the studios are just like, we don't know about this, so we'll just see what happens with it. Thankfully, though, I've heard through the grapevine that a ton of movies that premiered at festivals last year, such as South by Southwest and Fantastic Fest, a lot of movies from those festivals will be released in January, and from what I've heard, it's going to be a pretty good, month. So I'm actually looking forward to that. And Primate being one of those movies, and I'm just going to tell you right off the bat that this movie is awesome. So I first heard about this movie again through it premiered at Fantastic Fest last year, and everyone was like, "Yeah, it's pretty solid. It's a pretty great movie." And then I remember seeing the trailer for it, and I was like, "Yeah, that looks pretty fun." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. That seems really fun." But after walking out of this movie, it is legit just a 90-minute thrill ride, and it from start to finish, and it never lets up. So essentially, this movie is about this girl who her and her friends are returning home to her dad in Hawaii, and her family essentially owns this pet monkey that her mom was a particular scientist who was trying to get chimps and humans to communicate with each other and learn how to communicate with each other. And once they get home, everything seems fine, but then something happens in the movie, and things go very wrong, and this definitely turns into this all-out survival movie. The biggest praise I want to give this movie right off the bat is thank you so much for using practical effects in about just about everything that you do in this movie, down to the suit of the chimp, down to the kills and all that stuff. You guys, the team that was responsible for this was absolutely great. The everything looks so good. The whole thing with the chimpanzee, Ben is his name. The costume looks fantastic. It's a guy in a suit. They didn't use any CGI, and it's really a guy in a suit performing all this stuff, and he does fantastic. And the suit looks flawless. I mean, they do a great job of keeping it mostly at night when you see Ben, or kind of like in the darker side. Like when lights are on, he's kind of always kind of hanging out in the dark. There's a few scenes where he's in like uh, a well lit room or something like that, but even those are really well done. Most of the time, though, he's kind of kept in the shadows, which was a really great choice. But like I said, the suit looks flawless. If they used any CGI, which they might have, to touch up some stuff here and there, but the suit looks fantastic. Hats off to him for his performance too, because some of the physical stuff he does in this movie is just damn near terrifying, and it plays so well for the type of movie that this is going for, and just a really really great job overall. Now, if you came to this movie for kills, yeah, oh yeah, boy, you're gonna get some kills, and man, they do not hold back. Not only are the kills really good and really effective, and gives you that carnage candy that you're craving, but there's something really well done about the practical effects that they use in this movie, down to the point to where the theater that I saw it in, everybody in there was wincing and literally just having to talk to somebody about what just happened, and literally just just squirming in their chairs. And like, there's one death in particular, not going to give it away, but when it happened, you can kind of see something, you can kind of see it coming. And as it was happening, literally when something happened, when the death hit or whatever, literally my entire theater went, oh, oh, oh. And there's parts even throughout that build this tension of him with a certain person that you don't know how he's going to kill them. That really helps build a great, like I said, this great tension throughout, and down to the point to where, like for me, even for example, I was almost to the point where I was watching so many scenes like, ugh, like that, down to, because it was just a really really well affected how they've done all that. And thank you so much for using practical effects, because it looks leaps and bounds better above anything CGI related. And Just good job. Hats off to you. I also think this movie does a great job of capturing isolation. Like when she flies back home to Hawaii, it really goes out of its way to show you how isolated this place is. And it's literally they're in like yeah, while the island of Hawaii is beautiful and the location that they're at is beautiful, like everything surrounding them is so desolate and they're out there on their own. So you know right away that you're like, okay, when shit goes down here, it's going to get bad because they are literally in the middle of nowhere. And I think having that trapped like isolation feeling really adds to this like whole other element to the movie that just adds not only to the tension, but it just adds something extra to the story overall. Now, I know I've mentioned it a few times throughout this review, but I think this movie is super tense. Like everything leading up until the stuff happens with the monkey is like easily this calm before the storm. But once that stuff takes off, which is pretty early on, it's only like a 90-minute movie, but it goes into full drive and it does not stop until the end. Like literally to the point where this movie is easily like a white knuckle, fast paced 90-minute thrill ride where most of the people that I watched the movie with, including myself, there were several scenes where you're just locked in. It has your attention throughout the entire movie. Points to where you're holding your breath at what is going to happen, and even points to where you're just sitting there leaning in your chair, just wondering what's going to happen. And it just does such a great job of keeping you engaged and keeping you in that element of oh holy shit, what's going to happen, and where are things going to go? How's this going to end? And all that stuff. They do such a great job with that. They do a great job too with how they utilize Ben throughout this movie because he's in this environment that he knows. So as these characters are walking around this house, he can be anywhere, and they do a great job of being like having them look around and trying to figure out where he could be. But legit, how the point of he could attack from anywhere at any angle and anything like that does just a really, really great job of also builds so much tension, and it does it in a way that, like I said earlier, it just hooks you in and leaves you and it just takes you on this ride of I want to know how this is going to play out. There are several scenes that I really like too with Ben in particular that kind of like when he was when you thought he was going to kill somebody, but he would try to like almost like kind of be not playful, but there was hints of his old self in there a little bit. And there's one scene in particular, not going to give it away, but I mentioned it earlier in my when I was talking about the tension and whatnot. But there's a particular scene where somebody comes to the house and meets Ben for the first time after he's already went nuts. And the way that they go about that scene is that they play it so well of the fact that they keep building and building tension because it just shows Ben and this character, and it just keeps going and going and going. And so you're sitting there anticipating this kill or whatever horrific way this person's going to die, and a part of you is like, just hurry up already, let's get it over with, But it does such a great job of ratcheting up that tension that by the time that the kill does happen, it's a very well done payoff and another gnarly thing where you're like, oh, so just a really good job on the tension overall. They also do a really great job with the sound design in this movie. There's certain scenes where, like I've mentioned in many reviews in the past, how they know when to use certain types of music and they know when to stay silent. And I tell you, in this movie, the silence, when they choose to be completely silent, it is absolutely deafening. That, and they chose to cast Troy Kotzer, I think is how you say his name. He's the one that played the dad in Coda a few years ago, which if you've not seen Coda, it's a phenomenal movie, but he won Best Supporting Actor for that movie. So glad he did. Just a really good movie. But they did a really great, and I think almost genius idea of casting him in this movie because he's deaf in real life. So he plays, obviously, this deaf character in the movie. And so when his scenes come into play where he can't hear anything that's going on, it's really well done because as the audience, the way they use the sound to go into what he, to his perspective, so you just hear absolutely nothing. It's just something really eerie and hauntingly great about that, and it does it so well, and it really puts you in the shoes of, being in this situation of all this stuff that is happening and not being able to hear any of it and have no idea what is going on. And again, that's another thing that just adds to the tension and it just does such a great job of all that. Like I said, I thought just him being a part of that and them adding just that little element to this movie, I thought was just really just genius on their part. One of the other things I like about this movie is the music. They have this score throughout the movie that's almost like this piano trill that kind of happens throughout the movie. And when they use it, there's something about that particular music that is so like eerie and got this haunting flavor to it that is really well done, and it really, really adds something to the movie. Like they choose where to use it, and the moments that they pick for it is really, really well done because there is just something so eerily creepy about that little piano trill. It's just something so very simple, but yet so very effective. Now, as for our characters in the movie, I do like the fact that this is a movie that you do care about the characters. This is not one of those throwaway movies where you're like, okay, this is just going to be a slasher type movie where, you know, these teenagers are here to be picked off, and that'll be the end of it, and we'll root for the killer at the end of it. It's not that really, and this is a movie where you really do care about the characters. There is something going on with the certain characters, the reason why they've come back home and all that stuff like that, and there's something also that happens with one of the characters that almost adds this ticking time element to the story, which also adds another level of tension. So not only are they trapped in this isolated place with this killer monkey running around, but you have something else that happens in the movie that adds almost this extra flavor of, okay, now if we don't do something in a certain amount of time, it's going to be bad. So I'm trying to tiptoe around what that is because I don't want to give anything away. But it adds another element to it to where not only you have all that going on, but you throw this into the mix, so it just keeps ratcheting up that tension. And it does a great job where we care about that character, where we're like, yes, I want to see what is going to happen with that character. I want to see everybody get out of this if they possibly can. Now, granted, there is some moments in this movie with certain characters that you're going to be like, that was completely just a dumb decision. Why would you do that? I don't understand at all. Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
But it's one of those things that I know that it happens with every movie. If they didn't go about that or do it a certain way, they'd be like, okay, well, this movie could be over in 15 minutes. So, but like I said, that's something that didn't really take away from my overall enjoyment of the movie at all, like the way that it's done and the way everything is set up and executed throughout. It's just so engaging and so fun that none of that really mattered to me. I also think they do a really good job with, at least to me, it looked like, now I could be wrong, maybe upon rewatch I'll see that I was wrong or my, eyes are playing tricks on me, but to me, as the movie went along, they did a really, really great job of making the monkey look more like disheveled and manic each time that you saw it. So, it starts out, it's like this cute little playful monkey, and he looks normal and everything. And like I said, each scene almost to me, he looked more and more just manic and just unhinged, and it almost made him even scarier as the movie went on, where each time you saw him, it's like he just became more and more evil and unhinged or whatever. So they did a really good job with that. At least to me, that's what it looked like. Like I said, I could be wrong, and my eyes could have been playing tricks on me. But I really enjoyed that element of it. I think it added to this thing where it just made the monkey scarier as it went on. I mean, already a killer monkey is pretty terrifying anyway, but having that like look of him as things get worse, I think was just another cool element that they added to it. One thing that I think is really interesting about this movie too is that they do a great job of making you really feel bad for Ben as well. Not only do you feel bad for these characters, and even though this is crazy because this monkey has completely became unhinged and is really killing these people in these most brutal ways, there's still something there that they do that really just makes you feel bad for Ben. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's really not his fault that he is the way, that this happened to him. So as somebody who loves animals, and I know there's tons of people out there that love animals, and it's so funny because this is coming from a guy that's in a monkey suit throughout the entire movie, but he feels such like a real animal throughout this movie that you can't help but to feel just feel bad for him as the movie goes. And I think that's a really interesting element to add, especially like I said, when he's doing all this terrible things to these people. Also, without giving anything away, there's also this really interesting fact at the beginning of the movie that essentially I didn't know about that kind of sets up what's going to happen in the movie. And I just thought it was really interesting how they talked about how a certain something can set something off. Again, I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to give anything away, but I just thought that was a really interesting fact about it, something I didn't know. So that was really cool to have in the movie. Like I said, I'll be honest, I didn't really have any negatives or anything with this movie. This was a movie, like I said, going into it, I was like, this seems like fun. I think I'll have a good time with it. And as it went on, and by the time it ended, I was like, yeah, that movie absolutely delivered. I think it was a lot of fun. This is a movie I would go into with, just don't take it too seriously. Just go into it and have a good time. And I think you will really enjoy it. Like I said, I know there's some parts where people can look at certain things with certain characters and be like, that was dumb. That was a completely dumb decision. Why would you do that? I completely understand that. But at the end of the day, I feel like with our other characters being so strong and you really rooting for them to get out of the situation, that you kind of forgive all that. There's kind of a little bit of forgiveness there. And like I said earlier, this is a movie that if you're interested in seeing some pretty good carnage candy, this movie delivers that in spades with really good practical effects attached to it. So overall, I would absolutely say please go check this movie out. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a very, very fun theater experience. If you can see it with a lot of people, I think to get those reactions from people and all that stuff, especially throughout with the deaths and the tension and all that stuff, I think it will add to your experience and you'll have such a good time with it, because I know I did. And this is a great edge of your seat movie. If you're looking for one of those just to be white knuckling for 90 minutes, I can't recommend it enough. It's also a great date movie. You can go and have a lot of fun with it. Like I said, I highly recommend checking this one out in the theater. It's just a lot of fun. It's a really good time, and it's worth the money. So thank you, everybody. That's my review for the brand new film Primate. I highly recommend it. If this is the review you're finding me on, please come over and check out my channel. I have a whole backlog of stuff from 2025. I also just released my most disappointing movies of 2025. Please check that out. It would be a lot of fun. I had really pain in the ass time making that video because my file corrupted and I had to do everything to salvage it, almost 2 days of work to try to salvage it. So please check that one out if you will. Later on this week, or in the upcoming week, I also have my top horror movies of 2025 coming. So please come over and check all that out. And please remember to like, comment, and subscribe and all that fun stuff. That way I can see all of you in the next one. Thank you all so much.